Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025. House Speaker Mike Johnson cancels much of the week's legislative agenda, telling members of Congress to begin their month-long August recess early to avoid votes on releasing the files related to convicted sex offender and accused trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. House Oversight Committee and Justice Department seek to interview Ghislane Maxwell, former girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein, who's now in prison related to his crimes. President Donald Trump, when asked about Maxwell, pivots to accusations of Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election, accusing former President Barack Obama of treason for allegedly manufacturing evidence. Senate takes its first vote on the fiscal year 2026 spending bills, with Democrats warning Republicans that their unilateral push for rescissions packages is undermining any bipartisan goodwill in the appropriations process. President Trump meets with the president of the Philippines, Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr., in the White House Oval Office, talking trade and Indo-Pacific security and China. And President Trump announces the United States will withdraw again from UNESCO, the United Nations Cultural, Education, and Scientific Organization, due to, the president says, its woke agenda and anti-Israel bias. New York Times writes that Speaker Mike Johnson on Tuesday announced he was cutting short the week's legislative business and sending the House home early for the summer on Wednesday to avoid having to hold votes on releasing files related to the accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. He made the move to deny Democrats the chance to try to force procedural votes on measures that would call on the Justice Department to make the information public. It reflected how deep divisions among Republicans on the matter have now paralyzed the House, as Republicans seek to avoid a politically perilous vote on a matter that is confounding President Trump and roiling their MAGA base. That was from the New York Times article. Speaker Johnson brought this up himself at the start of a House Republican leadership news conference.
Involved in the Epstein evil, okay, which is what it was. Just call it what it was. There are innocent victims of those unspeakable sex crimes, okay? Some of them were minors, some of them were not. When the Epstein records are turned over to the public, which we must do as quickly as possible, we have to also be very judicious and careful about protecting the innocent. I think everybody in the country should understand the necessity of that. It is the standard. I used to be a litigator. It's the standard in the court of law and the courts. It's the standard in law enforcement. Anyone who's served in law enforcement understands the necessity of that. It is the standard with government agencies. We protect the innocent. So we cannot be careless in an open release like that. You have to be very careful. The president himself has said that he wants maximum transparency and all credible evidence to be turned over to the American public so that everyone can make their own decisions. We're owed that. And we want any individual who's been involved in any way in the Epstein evils to be brought to justice as quickly as possible. And the law should be brought down upon their head. We're unequivocal about that, okay? We have to make sure that the credible evidence is revealed, and we're doing that. The president has made a request to the courts in the grand jury testimony and the files there, for example. And the court should turn that over, and that will be a continuing and ongoing quest. Now, what we refuse to do is participate in another one of the Democrats' political games. This is a serious matter. We are not going to let them use this as a political battering ram. The Rules Committee became the ground for them to do that. We're not going to allow them to engage in that charade anymore. Why do I call it a charade? Because the Democrats are trying to play gotcha politics right now when, as the leader just pointed out, they don't have any moral high ground on this at all. They controlled the Department of Justice for the last 4 years. Has anyone forgotten? They had all these files the entire time. They sat on everything Epstein related for 4 long years while President Biden was in office. You could draw your own conclusions as to why, but we've been intellectually consistent the entire time. And I want to say this about my colleagues Ro Khanna and Jim McGovern and Hakeem Jeffries and so many others. They've tweeted about Epstein countless times in the last 2 weeks, but go back and look at their social media accounts, we have, and their public comments. They had exactly 0 posts on the subject for the last 4 years of the Biden administration. Interesting, isn't it? We all understand that the America First agenda and the American people are best served by putting an end to the Democrats' sideshows. And that's what we're doing by not allowing the Rules Committee to continue with that nonsense this week.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, at a news conference on Capitol Hill with other House Republican leaders. More from the New York Times article. Republicans had planned votes this week on an immigration measure, a permitting bill, and a rollback of some Biden-era regulations. But the House Rules Committee, the powerful panel controlled by the Speaker that determines which legislation reaches the floor, has been upended by the Epstein issue, with Democrats repeatedly demanding votes on it. The result is that the House cannot move ahead on any substantive legislation. Republicans now plan to wrap up votes Tuesday and early Wednesday on some non-controversial bills and call their recess by mid-afternoon on Wednesday. Representative Thomas Massie, Republican of Kentucky, said he still planned to circumvent House Republican leaders and force a vote on releasing the Epstein files in September with the help of Democrats using a maneuver known as a discharge petition. That's some of the reporting from the New York Times. Speaker Johnson was asked about Congressman Massie.
You say yesterday that you were in lockstep with the administration on the Epstein files, but it doesn't seem that you're in lockstep with all of your House Republicans. Thomas Massie just saying in the past hour that this is going to come back and bite Republicans. What do you say to those schisms inside your conference here?
I say Thomas Massie is the one trying to bite Republicans, okay? I'm not quite certain what his strategy is.
But it's just not him. I mean, otherwise you guys wouldn't be calling off the week tomorrow. You'd be able to put your rules on the floor. I understand the issue with the Democrats.
Yeah, no, I just explained why. We're not going to play political games with this. We've all been very clear and transparent. The House Rules Resolution sets a good standard and requires all credible evidence to be released, and that's exactly where the White House is. There's no, as I've said many times over the last, as I've said many times, there's no daylight between the White House and the House. You have to allow the legislation to ripen, and you also have to allow the administration the space to do what it is doing. The president has said clearly, and he has now ordered his DOJ to do what it is we've all needed DOJ to do for years now, and that is to get everything released. So they're in the process of that. There's no purpose for Congress to push an administration to do something that they're already doing. And so this is for political games. I'm very resolute on this. We can both call for full transparency and also protect victims. And if you run roughshod or you do it too quickly, that's not what happens. But I'm convinced that the DOJ is going to do their job, the administration is going to do their job, and we'll do our job. And so we'll see to it.
House Speaker Mike Johnson at a news conference with other House Republican leaders. This was after the private meeting of the House Republican Conference members. Outside that morning meeting, Congressman Thomas Massie, Republican of Kentucky, spoke to reporters about his plans for a resolution on the Jeffrey Epstein files.
Mr. Massie, the pool cameras here. Just looking ahead now, it seems like the House may leave even earlier. How does that affect your attempts to be able to get signatures for your discharge petitions?
So the discharge petition isn't ripe for 7 legislative days, and unless we stay through Friday, which wasn't even on the calendar, we can't get it to ripen and collect signatures before recess.
Were you surprised at all to see the Rules Committee kind of come to a standstill last night over this issue? I mean, you used to be on the Rules Committee, and obviously you've been caring a lot about transparency in the Epstein case. Was that surprising at all?
No, it's not surprising to me. I don't think this issue is going away over August. I think that was the admonition of our speaker in there, was just sort of stick your head in the sand, let the administration maybe dissipate this by dribbling some stuff out. I mean, I'm heavily paraphrasing, but I think that's his strategy, and I don't think it's going to work. I mean, people have wanted these files for years, and then, the president's staff, administration, his own children, his vice president have promised that these files would come out, and now we're being told it's a hoax. It doesn't wash. And whether it's Republican, Democrat, or Independent, across all those categories, it's only like 5 or 6% who don't want the files out.
Do you think the president's at risk of losing his base over this issue?
Well, you don't lose your base over one single thing, but he's eroding his base. More importantly, if we don't take the right side of this issue, it's going to cost us votes in the midterms. People are becoming despondent, they're apathetic. Why would they go vote if they gave us the House, the Senate, and the White House, and the transparency and justice they were promised doesn't happen? Why should they vote in the midterms? And I think it could be a real problem for us. That's why it would behoove the Speaker to bring this to the floor. It would be in the best interest of this institution. Just vote this out, give it to the Senate, and let them do their thing.
Do you think the president is losing trust with members like you who want more transparency?
I wouldn't say he's lost trust. I'm sort of I would say, a different category. The president's consultants have spent $1.8 million against me, and I got a new tweet last night, or a Truth Social last night, and clearly that was because I've done this Epstein file. Like, dogs don't bark at parked cars, right? This bill is moving. This is coming to a vote. We've got enough Republican co-sponsors of the bill, twice as many as we need right now, such that when they sign it and every Democrat signs this, we're going to force a vote on it. It's not going away.
Congressman Thomas Massie, Republican from Kentucky, speaking to reporters this morning. He is co-sponsoring the resolution with Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California. And that Truth Social post that he mentioned from the president from last night, it reads, Thomas Massie, the worst Republican congressman and an almost guaranteed no vote each and every time, is an embarrassment to Kentucky. He's lazy, slow-moving, and totally disingenuous, a real loser. Never has anything positive to add. Looking for someone good to run against this guy, someone I can endorse and vigorously campaign for. That's the post from President Trump. Congressman Ted Lieu, Democrat of California, the Democratic Caucus vice chair, spoke at a news conference today about the change in House schedule due to the Epstein issue.
They are actually ending this week early because they're afraid to cast votes on the Jeffrey Epstein issue. The Rules Committee is not meeting because they're afraid to cast votes to release the Epstein files. So you've got this Epstein issue affecting congressional operations and making sure that the congressional Republicans don't work on trying to lower costs. So this is an epic cover-up, right? This is a cover-up of epic proportions where you've got the majority party literally having us leave Congress early and not having the Rules Committee meet because they don't want to deal with releasing the Epstein files. We should release the Epstein files. It is what Donald Trump campaigned on. It's what Attorney General Pam Bondi talked about this February when she said the Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on her desk right now. Why don't we have that client list? And these are the questions the American people keep asking, and the story is not going to go away because at core, this is an issue about underage women who were sexually abused and assaulted. Attorney General Pam Bondi should not be protecting Jeffrey Epstein's legacy, nor his clients, nor should congressional Republicans be doing the same.
Congressman Ted Lieu, Democrat from California, the Democratic Caucus vice chair, at a news conference this morning with other House Democratic leaders after the closed meeting of House Democrats. This is Washington Today. Politico writes that President Donald Trump on Tuesday attempted to shift the public's focus away from the building crisis around the release of sealed documents detailing the Jeffrey Epstein case by urging his Justice Department to go after his predecessors. Trump said whether it's right or wrong, it's time to go after these people, accusing former President Barack Obama of treason. As he took questions alongside Filipino President Ferdinand Marcos in the Oval Office, Trump dismissed the furor over the disgraced former financier, driven largely by Republican lawmakers and his own supporters, as a witch hunt, claiming he didn't know about the Justice Department's decision to seek a new interview with Epstein confidant Ghislane Maxwell, who is currently serving a 20-year prison sentence for sex trafficking, minors, and other crimes. That's from Politico, and here is President Donald Trump.
Mr. President, do you support the Justice Department seeking a new interview with Ghislaine Maxwell? And do you urge the Attorney General to seek one?
I don't know anything about it. They're going to what? Meet her?
Your Deputy Attorney General has reached out to Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney asking for a new interview.
Yeah, I don't know about it, but I think it's something that sounds appropriate to do, yeah.
Do you have any concern that your Deputy Attorney General, as your former attorney, would be conducting the interview, given...
No, I have no concern. He's a very talented person. He's very smart. I didn't know that they were going to do it. I don't really follow that too much. It's sort of a witch hunt, just a continuation of the witch hunt. The witch hunt that you should be talking about is they caught President Obama absolutely cold, Tulsi Gabbard. What they did to this country in 2016, starting in 2016, but going up all the way going up to 2020 in the election. They tried to rig the election, and they got caught. And there should be very severe consequences for that. You know, when we caught Hillary Clinton, I said, you know what? Let's not go too far here. It's the ex-wife of a president, and I thought it was sort of terrible. And I let her off the hook, and I'm very happy I did. But it's time to start, after what they did to me, and whether it's right or wrong, it's time to go after people. Obama's been caught directly. So people say, oh, you know, a group. It's not a group. It's Obama. His orders are on the paper. The papers are signed. The papers came right out of their office. They sent everything to be highly classified. Well, the highly classified's been released. And what they did in 2016 and in 2020 is very criminal. It's criminal at the highest level. So that's really the things you should be talking about. I know nothing about the other, but I think it's appropriate that they do go.
President Donald Trump answering reporters' questions during his White House Oval Office meeting with the visiting president of the Philippines. That was the only question during the 45-minute session about Jeffrey Epstein, although President Trump kept returning to what he was just talking about there at the end with Barack Obama. And from a Newsweek article about that, it reads, the president's remarks come after Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, released a report on Friday alleging that Obama and his national security cabinet members manufactured intelligence regarding Russian interference in the 2016 election to, quote, lay the groundwork for what was essentially a years-long coup against President Trump. She said she would refer the officials to the Justice Department for prosecution. That was from Newsweek. And the office of former President Barack Obama issuing a response that reads in part, out of respect for the office of the presidency, our office does not normally dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of this White House with a response, but these claims are outrageous enough to merit one. These bizarre allegations are ridiculous and a weak attempt at distraction. Nothing in the document issued last week undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 presidential election but did not successfully manipulate any votes. More on the Jeffrey Epstein case. This from thehill.com. A House Oversight and Government Reform Subcommittee voted Tuesday to subpoena Ghislane Maxwell, the convicted sex offender and longtime associate of Jeffrey Epstein, as Republicans on Capitol Hill pushed for the publication of more information related to Epstein's case. During an unrelated subcommittee hearing, Congressman Tim Burchett, Republican of Tennessee, moved to direct the panel to authorize and issue a subpoena for Maxwell to appear for a deposition, which passed by voice vote. A spokesperson for the committee said in a statement the committee will seek to subpoena Ms. Maxwell as expeditiously as possible. Since Ms. Maxwell is in federal prison, the committee will work with the Department of Justice and Bureau of Prisons to identify a date when the committee can depose her. That was from The Hill. Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat from Illinois, the ranking member on the Judiciary Committee over in the Senate, spoke to reporters today about how this whole Epstein case is being viewed on that side of the Capitol.
Senator, what do you make of the House essentially grinding to a halt over the Jeffrey Epstein files?
Isn't it interesting that it takes a conspiracy and theories on that conspiracy to shut down the U.S. House of Representatives? It shows you how deep this administration is in these conspiracy theories.
Deputy Attorney Blanche today announced an intention to go and see Ghislaine Maxwell in federal prison to try to learn more information from her. Do you feel like that's an appropriate thing for him to do?
You've already had the Attorney General announce that she has possession of client lists and information and then can't produce it. So I'm not sure what this visit is going to claim.
The House, Tim Burchett, actually a congressman, just introduced a motion to subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell in the House Oversight Committee. Do you agree with a move like that in the Senate?
I'd have to think about that. I'm not sure what she has to offer. The question in my mind, why isn't the Attorney General and the head of the FBI producing the documents they already have? I mean, they talked a lot about them and talked at great length about what they contain, but yet they won't produce them. I'm for complete disclosure.
Senator Durbin, can you talk more about the information your committee received about 1,000 FBI personnel being tasked with combing through the Epstein-related files and flagging mentions of Trump's name?
We have a credible source that this occurred. It was a surprise that so many agents who should have been investigating issues of national security, safety, and narcotics and the like were assigned the task of going through this file here by Jeffrey Epstein creation. That to me seems like a waste of talent in law enforcement, and I believe it did happen.
Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat from Illinois, ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, speaking to reporters in the hallway of the Senate office building. CBS News reports that federal judges in New Jersey invoked a rarely used judiciary power to sideline interim U.S. Attorney Alina Habba, installing her top assistant as the state's top prosecutor. President Trump installed Habba, who had served as his personal attorney, on March 24th in an interim capacity. An appointee can lead a U.S. Attorney's office for up to 120 days pending Senate confirmation. Habba was not formally nominated for the role until July 1st and has not been confirmed. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who in social media posts on Sunday and Monday urged the judges to keep Habba in the role, blasted their decision Tuesday. Blanche accused the judges of trying to force out Habba and serving a left-wing agenda, not the rule of law. That was from CBS News. This is Washington Today. Senator Elizabeth Warren, writes Politico, said Tuesday she'll vote against the Senate's first batch of government funding bills, signaling early hardball by Democrats ahead of a shutdown deadline 10 weeks away. In a statement, the Massachusetts Democrat and progressive standard-bearer cited Trump administration moves to cut and freeze VA funding as the reason for opposing bipartisan funding bills on the Senate floor this week. Warren is the top Democrat on a subcommittee focused on military personnel. One of the funding measures on tap is for the VA and military infrastructure programs. It previously sailed through the panel in an overwhelmingly bipartisan vote. That was from Politico. The Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, spoke to reporters before a scheduled procedural vote on the military construction VA spending bill for fiscal year 2026.
We're doing something this week in the Senate that is a bit unusual, that we haven't done in a while. We're actually teeing up an appropriations bill to vote on the floor and have an amendment process. We're going to try and get consent. We're going to be on the Milcon VA legislative appropriations bill, and then hoping that we can get consent to add a couple of other bills into the package so that we can be voting on appropriations bills for the first time in a long time. And the reason I say that is because, as you all know, last year when Chuck Schumer was running the Senate, the Appropriations Committee reported out 11 of the 12 appropriations committees, or appropriations bills, I should say, all with bipartisan support, and not a single one of them was put on the floor for a vote. So we're fixing to change that. We think that there ought to be a regular appropriations process around here. The Democrats have indicated, because they're so upset over the rescissions bill last week, which, by the way, cut 0.1% of all federal spending, that somehow they can use that as an excuse to shut down the appropriations process and therefore shut down the government. We think that would be a big mistake, and hopefully they will think better of it and work with us. And we're trying to give them what they've been asking for, is a bipartisan appropriations process, which, frankly, I think a lot of us around here think is long overdue.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, at a news conference today with other Senate Republican leaders. The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, was asked at his news conference about this first fiscal year 2026 spending bill coming to the Senate floor.
Warning about rescissions. Do you think a bipartisan appropriations deal is possible if that money stays cut?
Look, we Democrats want a bipartisan deal. We're working together to get one. But the bottom line is Republicans are making it much harder. Rescissions, impoundment, pocket rescissions directly undoes this. And I said this about Senator Thune on the floor today. You can't say you want a bipartisan process, which he said yesterday, and at the same time put rescissions on the floor, which is the antithesis of bipartisan.
Senator Chuck Schumer, the minority leader, he was also asked at this news conference how he would vote on this first spending bill.
Go ahead, Burgess.
Will Democrats vote to advance this appropriations bill today?
Look, let me just talk about this appropriations bill. First, it was done in a bipartisan process, no question about it. Second, it undoes many of the awful DOGE cuts to veterans. And third, we'll have an amendment process after. This is just a motion to proceed, and we look forward to the amendment process. Go ahead.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, at a news conference today with other Senate Democratic leaders. Senate today also voted along party lines, 50-47, to confirm Terrence Cole to head the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration. He previously worked for over 20 years at that agency and is currently Virginia's Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security. Senate also confirmed Missouri Solicitor General Joshua Devine, 51-46, to serve on the Eastern and Western District Court of Missouri, the first federal district court judge to be approved by the Senate in President Trump's second term. Senator Angus King, independent from Maine, joined all Republicans in voting yes. Devine previously served as chief counsel to Senator Josh Hawley, Republican of Missouri. President Trump has said he wants the Senate to cancel August recess and stay in session and confirm more nominations. Politico's Jordan Carney writes on X, Senator Thune leaving the door open to clawing back more of the August recess, but he told Republicans in the Senate GOP lunch to plan to be in next weekend per person familiar. Story from the National News Desk. President Donald Trump announced on Monday that British-Swedish drug maker AstraZeneca will be investing $50 billion in the United States by 2030. This is just one of many significant investments from pharmaceutical companies, with many companies reacting to Trump's threat of imposing a 200% tariff on imported drugs. Investment will expand research and development and cell therapy manufacturing, with a new drug manufacturing facility being built in Virginia. AstraZeneca will also improve its clinical trial network within the United States and support investments in novel medicines. Drug maker said the facility will be the largest in its history. The money will also go towards facilities in California, Indiana, Maryland, and Texas. That was from the National News Desk. President Trump announced this during his White House Oval Office meeting with the visiting Philippine president.
We have a big announcement. AstraZeneca, the big drug company, is going to spend $50 billion, just announced $50 billion in the United States in order to build various places all over the country, big manufacturing plants, pharmaceutical plants all over the country, so that's an honor. And he said they did that because of the election and because of the fact that the tariffs are placed. So they're building their facilities in New York. $50 billion, that's a big investment. And it's going to be a very good investment. I have no doubt about it. So thank you to AstraZeneca.
President Trump in the White House Oval Office. From Reuters, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on Tuesday that he will meet his Chinese counterpart next week in Stockholm and discuss what is likely to be an extension of an August 12th deadline for a deal to avert sharply higher tariffs. Bessent told Fox Business Network's Mornings with Maria program that trade with China was in a very good place, and the meetings in Stockholm would take place next Monday and Tuesday. That was from Reuters. Here's the Treasury Secretary.
I think August 1st is a pretty hard deadline, but you know what'll happen. Well, for all countries, because what I think will happen is that the tariff level will boomerang back to the reciprocal level from April 2nd. That doesn't mean we can't negotiate when the countries are at the higher level. As a matter of fact, you know, I think President Trump may have created a pretty ingenious strategy here that, you know, if you're working at the high level, you're actually going to work faster. Secondly, China, that deal expires on August 12th, and I'm going to be in Stockholm on Monday and Tuesday with my Chinese counterparts, and we'll be working out and what is likely an extension then. I think trade's in a very good place with China. We're going to be talking about a lot of the other things that our countries can do together. Hopefully, we can see the Chinese pull back on some of this glut of manufacturing that they're doing and concentrate on building a consumer economy. We want to speak to them about the sanctioned Russian and Iranian oil that they're buying, what they're doing to aid Russia in the Ukraine war. So I think we've actually moved to a new level with China where it's very constructive and very we're going to be able to get a lot of things done now that trade has kind of settled in at a good level.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Fox Business Channel today. CNBC writes that President Donald Trump said Tuesday the U.S. has concluded a trade deal with Philippines that includes a 19% tariff on goods imported from the Southeast Asian country. Manila will not impose tariffs on U.S. goods as part of the deal, according to Trump, who praised the country for what he described as going open market with the United States. Wall Street today, the Dow up 179, NASDAQ down 81, and S&P up 4. More on President Trump's discussion with the president of the Philippines at the White House and the geopolitical situation in that part of the world when Washington Today continues in a moment.
In a nation divided, a rare moment of unity. This fall, C-SPAN presents Ceasefire, where the shouting stops and the conversation begins. In a town where partisan fighting prevails. One table, two leaders, one goal, to find common ground. This fall, Ceasefire, on the network that doesn't take sides, only on C-SPAN.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. Associated Press writes that President Donald Trump welcomed the Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. on Tuesday at the White House as the two countries are seeking closer security and economic ties in the face of shifting geopolitics in the Indo-Pacific region. Marcos, who met Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on Monday, is the first Southeast Asian leader to hold talks with Trump in his second term. Marcos' three-day visit shows the importance of the alliance between the treaty partners when China is increasingly assertive in the South China Sea, where Manila and Beijing have clashed over the hotly contested Scarborough Shoal. That was from Associated Press. Here are the two presidents asked about China.
I would like to ask both of you one person. Mr. President Marcos, next year, Philippines is going to be the rotating chair of ASEAN. I wonder how do you plan to balance your relationship between the United States and China? And for President Trump, Kremlin yesterday said if you are going to Beijing in September, they wouldn't rule out a meeting between you and President Putin. Is such a meeting possible? And how soon do you plan to visit China?
Well, we have a lot of meetings possible. President Xi has invited me to China, and we'll probably be doing that in the not too distant future, a little bit out, but not too distant. And I've been invited by a lot of people, and we'll make those decisions pretty soon. Please.
Well, as you say, we are chairing ASEAN for 2026. There is no need, in a sense, to balance, as you characterize it, to balance our relationship between the United States and China, simply because our foreign policy is an independent one, and we are essentially concerned with the defense of our territory and the exercise of our sovereign rights. Now, whether we do this not alone, we need to do this with our partners. And again, our strongest partner has always been the United States. But of course, we are trying to form coalitions and multilateral relations so that those like-minded nations who share the same values as we do, who hew to international law, most specifically the UNCLOS, present that position very clearly to anyone who has intentions of unilaterally changing the world order, and that is how we are guided in that.
And I don't mind if he gets along with China, because we're getting along with China very well. We have a very good relationship. In fact, the magnets, which is a little complex piece of material, but the magnets are coming out, very well. They're sending them in record numbers. we're getting along with China very well, and I don't mind if the president dealt with China, if that's meant, because I think he has to do what's right for his country. I've always said, make the Philippines great again. Do whatever you need to do, but you're dealing with China wouldn't bother me at all.
No, well, now it is something that we have to do in any case.
Yeah.
And certainly.
In the White House Oval Office, President Donald Trump and the President of the Philippines, Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Story from Reuters. President Donald Trump has decided to pull the United States out of the, quote, woke and, again, quote, divisive UN Culture and Education Agency, UNESCO, the White House said on Tuesday, repeating a move he took in his first term that was reversed by Joe Biden. The withdrawal from the Paris-based agency, which was founded after World War II to promote peace through international cooperation in education, science, and culture, will take effect at the end of next year. State Department accused UNESCO of supporting a globalist ideological agenda for international development at odds with our America First foreign policy. It said its decision to admit the Palestinians as a member state was highly problematic, contrary to U.S. policy, and contributed to the proliferation of anti-Israel rhetoric. That was from the Reuters article. UNESCO stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce had more at her news conference today.
And today, the United States informed Director General Audrey Azoulay of the United States' decision to withdraw from the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, also known, of course, as UNESCO. Continued involvement in UNESCO is not in the national interest of the United States. UNESCO works to advance divisive social and cultural causes and maintains an outsized focus on the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, a globalist ideological agenda for international development at odds with our America First foreign policy. UNESCO's decision to admit the, quote, state of Palestine, end quote, as a member state is highly problematic, contrary to U.S. policy, and contributed to the proliferation of anti-Israel rhetoric within the organization. Continued U.S. participation in international organizations will focus on advancing American interests with clarity and conviction. Based on President Trump's executive order, continued participation in international organizations is under review, and this is one result of that review, confirming the importance of making sure that all of what we do comports with the America First agenda.
Tammy Bruce, the State Department spokesperson, opening up her news conference in Washington. The Director General of UNESCO, Audrey Azoulay, putting out a statement, reads in part, the reasons put forward by the United States to withdraw from the organization are the same as 7 years ago, even though the situation has changed profoundly. Political tensions have receded, and UNESCO today constitutes a rare forum for consensus on concrete and action-oriented multilateralism. These claims also contradict the reality of UNESCO's efforts, particularly in the field of Holocaust education and the fight against anti-Semitism, part of the statement from UNESCO. This is the third United Nations agency the Trump administration is withdrawing from. The others are the World Health Organization and the Human Rights Council. Story from the New York Post. Long Island Republican Congressman Andrew Garbarino is set to become the next chair of the powerful House Homeland Security Committee. South Shore representative edged out fellow Congressman Michael Guest, Republican of Mississippi, Carlos Jimenez, Republican of Florida, and Clay Higgins, Republican of Louisiana, in a committee vote Monday for the highly coveted role, which oversees the panel that deals with a portfolio of domestic security issues. That was from the New York Post. Today, the full Republican conference met privately and ratified this election. And then on the House floor, it was made official. You're going to hear Congresswoman Virginia Foxx, Republican of North Carolina, presiding over the House, and Congressman Kevin Hern, Republican of Oklahoma, the Policy Committee chair, offering the resolution.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, by direction of the House Republican Conference, I send to the desk privilege resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 600. Resolved that the following named members be and are hereby elected to the following standing committees of the House of Representatives. Committee on Foreign Affairs, Mr. Fine. Committee on Homeland Security, Mr. Garbarino, Chair.
That the resolution be considered as read.
Without objection, the resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
On the House floor today, Congressman Garbarino will be taking over for former Chairman Mark Green, Republican of Tennessee, who has resigned from the House, saying he was offered an opportunity in the private sector that was too exciting to pass up. Congressman Garbarino putting out a statement, "I'm honored to have earned the trust and confidence of my colleagues to lead the House Committee on Homeland Security. As a lifelong New Yorker and representative of a district shaped by 9/11, I understand the stakes of this responsibility. Never forget is more than a slogan. It's a commitment I have carried with me throughout my entire adult life, and one that will continue to drive my work as chairman. We have serious work ahead of us, securing the border, confronting terrorism, strengthening our cybersecurity, and hardening our national defenses are all critical to keeping Americans safe. I look forward to working with my colleagues on the committee to take these challenges and deliver on the mission the American people expect us to carry out." House Homeland Security Committee Democratic members held a forum today talking about the Trump administration's immigration and deportation policies. It was led by Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, Democrat from Illinois.
I want to start by saying something that I often say in committee, which is that I'm a proud daughter of hardworking Guatemalan immigrants, proudly representing a community made up of immigrants from all over the world in Illinois' 3rd Congressional District, a district that knows its rights and serves its community, a district standing against the abuses of wannabe kings and jesters. And I want to start today's Congressional Oversight Forum that we're calling Trump's Department of Homeland Security, unaccountable, unlawful, unconstitutional, by sharing some of our own experiences with DHS and ICE. Let me start by saying that on Tuesday, July 8th, 2025, Homeland Security investigation agents trespassed onto grounds under the private control of the National Museum of Puerto Rican Arts and Culture in my district, Illinois 3. HSI agents had no warrant and refused to comply with requests by the museum that the agents exit the premises. They, of course, used intimidation, and it was private property. Yet Trump's DHS is unlawful. Trespassing on private property and failing to properly identify themselves, produce a warrant, and depart when asked by the museum staff are all the kind of behaviors of rogue actors who have decided to reject accountability, civil rights, and the rule of law. On June 18th, 2025, members of Congress were denied entrance to the Broadview Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE Processing Center in Illinois. And under the law, members of Congress have the authority to enter any facility operated by or for the Department of Homeland Security uses to detain people. Even though congressional oversight is the law, DHS has changed the rules limiting access to members of Congress, a policy that they decided to implement without congressional authority. DHS is unaccountable. They continue to break the law and bypass congressional authority to conceal the ways in which they are abusing power of DHS to violate our rights, undermine due process, and tear our communities apart. And on June 4th, 2025, my office was alerted to reports that at an Alternatives to Detention, an ATD, Intensive Supervision Appearance Program, ISAP location, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents separated multiple immigrants from their attorney at last-second mandatory check-ins and detained them in Chicago. Trump's DHS is unconstitutional. They ask people to appear to court just to have their cases immediately dismissed, and before they can get out of the building, handcuff them, shove them into elevators, and then into unmarked cars. Their insidious methods to circumvent the Constitution undermine due process and erode the rule of law. The experiences of my district, city, and state are not unique. Under the Trump administration, DHS is an out-of-control, abusive terror force that disregards law, rejects accountability, and tramples on the very foundations of our Constitution.
Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, Democrat from Illinois, opening up a House Homeland Security Committee Democratic Members Forum. Los Angeles Times reported on Monday that more than a month after President Trump made the fiercely contentious decision to send about 700 U.S. Marines to Los Angeles, these troops will begin withdrawing from the city, Pentagon officials said. The decision comes a week after the Pentagon announced that half of the almost 4,000 National Guard troops deployed to Los Angeles would be released from duty. The Marines and Guard were sent to the city in early June amid widespread federal immigration raids and fiery protests against the enforcement actions, with the Trump administration vowing to crack down on, quote, rioters, looters, and thugs. That was from the LA Times. President Trump today spoke about immigration in the White House Oval Office during his meeting with the visiting president of the Philippines. He was asked about the case last weekend of an off-duty agent shot in New York City.
Kristi Noem was in New York City visiting an off-duty CBP officer who was allegedly shot this weekend by an illegal alien who came into the country during the previous administration.
Right.
What is your message to any local leaders who continue to push sanctuary city policies after this nearly tragic incident?
So the only thing I don't understand, because you like to understand things and we're all smart people and all, but why would they allow 21 million people into our country, unvetted, unchecked? You don't allow it. You wouldn't allow people then. He's tough. No, the country's run properly. Biden and his group of thugs, and I don't think it was Biden, I think it was the people that surrounded that beautiful Resolute desk right behind you. They allowed 21 million people, probably much more than that, and many of them came from jails and gangs and drug dealers and mental institutions, insane asylums. Many of them are very sick. 21 million, probably 25 million, probably even more than that. And we're getting them out. Many were murderers, as I said. They killed people. Many killed more than one person. Stone cold murders. I don't understand why they would have allowed that. There's only two reasons. The vote, because they want voters. That's one reason. I don't think they would have done it for that because they cheat. You know, they're so good at cheating, they don't need that. But the vote, and the second reason is they hate our country. I think they hate our country. I actually do. And it's the biggest problem. I mean, much of our time is spent with, you know, we have the strongest border anywhere in the world now. Maybe even stronger than your border, if you can believe it. We have no people came in last month, zero, which is pretty amazing. I'm not even sure I can believe that. But liberals are the ones that do that calculation. So, but we had no people come in. A year ago, we had hundreds of thousands of people come in. Hundreds of thousands of people. And they flowed in. And if it wasn't for the election, it would have been millions of people came in last year. So millions of people prior to election time, they allowed millions and millions of people to come into our, I mean, you saw it. They'd open the gates. If you took an Alabama-LSU football game that holds 128,000 people, I was there, 128,000 people, and I liked them and they liked me. But if you took that and doubled it, that's what used to flow into our country on a daily basis. It's not even believable. And we're getting them out, and we're starting with the worst ones. And we had a man shot yesterday, a police officer who's a great gentleman, shot right here in the throat. Probably won't be able to speak again. But he was brave, and he shot the other guy, and they ended up getting him. And you saw the scene where his friend took him to a hospital and dumped him down on the sidewalk. The whole thing was crazy. But why would anybody do to our country what these Democrats have done? And honestly, we can never forget it. We can never forget it. What they have done, the damage that they've done to America is very, very sad.
President Donald Trump in the White House Oval Office. Story from Fox News. The mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, informed the Department of Justice on Monday that he is shifting the city's more restrictive policy on federal immigration detainers after the government warned it would sue over it. Congresswoman Victoria Spartz, Republican from Indiana, posting on X, "My deepest sympathies to the Osbourne family. Ozzy was a true pioneer of heavy metal, an enduring symbol of the rebellious, freedom-loving spirit that resonates across our country and throughout the world. He will be missed." Story from Variety. Ozzy Osbourne, a founding father of British heavy metal, a latter-day solo star, and a new millennium reality TV luminary, died Tuesday after a years-long struggle with Parkinson's disease. He was 76 years old. Ozzy Osbourne was a guest at the 2002 White House Correspondents' Dinner at the height of the reality TV The Osbournes' stardom. President George W. Bush noticed.
Ozzy Osbourne. Might have been a mistake. The thing about Ozzy is he's made a lot of big hit recordings. Party with the Animals, Sabbath, bloody Sabbath. Facing hell. Black skies and bloodbath in paradise. Ozzy, Mom loves your stuff.
President George W. Bush at the 2002 White House Correspondents' Dinner with Ozzy Osbourne in the audience. Osby was on C-SPAN one more time. In 2010, he sang his hit Crazy Train at a rally on the National Mall in D.C. The rally was to, quote, restore sanity and or fear. It was a half-serious, half-satirical event led by then Comedy Central hosts Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert. From C-SPAN's video library in 2010, a rally on the National Mall. Ozzy Osbourne has died at the age of 76. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word and get the stories making headlines in Washington emailed to you every day. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.